So right now, um, millions of really highly motivated professionals are basically sitting on top of these massive, incredibly expensive digital graveyards.
Oh, absolutely. The course graveyard.
Right. They've spent hundreds, sometimes even like thousands of dollars buying this promise of a total transformation. I mean, they buy these comprehensive courses to master generative AI or, these massive curriculum bundles to launch a startup.
Or those like 80-hour video series on corporate leadership.
Exactly. And they get the login, they see the dashboard with its 65 neatly organized modules, they get that massive dopamine rush, and then nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing happens.
Literally nothing. The completion rate for these solo self-paced courses hovers around an abysmal 3 to 6%. So today we're really dismantling this passive learning trap because for you listening, the era of selling access to a static video library is just over.
It really is. And I mean, it's a fundamental failure of behavioral psychology when you look at it. We basically confused access to information with the actual acquisition of a skill, like buying a gym membership and thinking you're fit.
Exactly. You buy a password to a server, but you are left completely isolated with the material. And the friction of daily life always, inevitably, overrides that solitary pursuit of long-term knowledge.
Right. And if you swing completely to the other side of the pendulum to try and solve that isolation, you end up hiring a private consultant or an executive coach.
Which is great, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You have someone holding your feet to the fire every single week. But it severely drains your capital. And for the expert who is providing that service, it's honestly a structural nightmare.
Because they're trapped trading hours for dollars.
Right. They either deliver that maximum personal touch and cap their revenue, or they try to scale infinitely and just lose the human connection entirely.
And that binary choice, passive scale versus unscalable intimacy, that has really dictated the creator economy and corporate training for a decade. But the data we're looking at today proves that this is just a false dilemma.
Totally. Yeah. Because we are looking at a highly engineered middle ground. So welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we are exploring a revolutionary educational and consulting hybrid that sits right in the sweet spot of that spectrum.
Yeah, it's known as the done with you model, or in French, the fait avec vous model.
Fait avec vous. And you'll most commonly see this packaged, marketed, and executed under the title of a boot camp.
Right. And the architecture of this model is fundamentally rewriting how adults actually acquire complex skills, and how independent experts monetize their knowledge.
And how tangible, undeniable results are generated in a completely saturated digital economy.
Okay.
So let's unpack this. Our mission today is to tear down the engine of the done with you model.
To see exactly why it produces such radically different outcomes than traditional e-learning or, one-on-one consulting.
Exactly. And we have a genuinely fascinating stack of sources to pull from for you today. We've got raw YouTube transcripts from high-level business mentors like Celine Pinto.
We're also looking at rigorous corporate training methodologies from institutions like Segos and Studia.
Right. And we have academic reports on pedagogical engineering from FUN, MOOC. And we even have the unvarnished sales pages and internal syllabuses from successful boot camps spanning AI automation, podcasting, hypergrowth, and solopreneurship.
What really stands out when you aggregate this much diverse material is the absolute unyielding consensus across entirely different disciplines.
That's wild.
It really is. Whether a facilitator is teaching a freelancer how to build a custom GPT or guiding a CEO through restructuring a corporate hierarchy, the underlying mechanics of human motivation and procrastination just remain identical.
So if you're listening to this right now and you've ever felt that crushing guilt of an unfinished online course, or if you're an expert yourself who feels entirely burned out by the bottleneck of consulting, this deep dive is going to shift your entire paradigm.
Because we're looking at the exact intersection of high scalability and intense human accountability.
Yeah. So let's start with the hard boundaries. What actually defines a done with you boot camp? Because, boot camp is a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot.
A ton. So let's anchor the definition using the structural framework provided by Celine Pinto. She mentors independent trainers and coaches on this exact transition.
Okay, what did she say?
Well, the core of the Done With You model is a cohort-based group coaching format defined by a strictly enforced limited duration. We are looking at a minimum of 4 weeks and a maximum of 8 weeks.
Wait. Only 4 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, it rarely, if ever, stretches to 12 weeks.
I want to push back on that timeline immediately, actually. Because 4 weeks feels incredibly brief to master something complex, like corporate strategy or advanced audio engineering.
Yeah.
Why the artificial constraint?
Right.
I mean, why not a 6-month program to ensure they really get it?
Because if you extend the timeline, you trigger Parkinson's law. That's the adage that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
Oh, right. If you give me a month, it takes a month. If you give me 6 months, it takes 6 months.
Exactly. The bootcamp format is an exercise in applied pressure. The objective isn't exhaustive academic mastery. The objective is to generate the maximum viable output in the minimum amount of time.
So if you stretch a cohort beyond 12 weeks, the psychological urgency just evaporates.
Precisely. And the defining characteristic of the entire fait, avec, vous model is a dynamic Pinto refers to as action/reaction.
Action-reaction. It sounds very kinetic.
It is entirely kinetic. This model is aggressively low on dense, abstract theory. It prioritizes immediate, raw execution. You aren't sitting in a virtual lecture hall taking notes on the biomechanical theory of a push-up.
Right. You are down on the floor doing push-ups while the instructor counts.
Exactly. You're doing the work.
It's like the concept of time boxing in a high-end professional kitchen. You know, you don't teach a new sous chef how to execute a perfect hollandaise sauce by having them read a textbook for 3 weeks.
Right, in some quiet back office.
Yeah, you put them on the line during the Friday night dinner rush and tell them you have exactly 3 minutes, make the sauce, or the table doesn't eat.
That's a great analogy. The bootcamp artificially manufactures that dinner rush. It forces you to perform under the constraint of time and peer observation.
So what's fascinating here is how the model actively relies on omission, right?
Yes. The academic reports regarding podcasting bootcamps from our sources highlight this beautifully. Traditional educational design often suffers from severe bloat.
Like the creator feels this anxious need to teach the student absolutely everything they know to justify the price tag.
Right, but the Done With You model deliberately ignores secondary details. It isolates only the load-bearing pillars necessary to achieve a specific immediate outcome. Everything else is just cut.
Let's look at a concrete syllabus from the source stack to see this in practice. Take the Bootcamp Entrepreneurial designed by Melody Lambert on the platform Latranchi.
Okay, yeah.
It's a rigid 30-day container consisting of 30 daily, ultra-specific missions. It is engineered specifically for someone stuck in the agonizing idea phase of launching a business.
And if you look at the sequencing of those 30 missions, it's a masterclass in psychological pacing. Lambert isn't selling a vague promise of becoming an entrepreneur.
Right.
The syllabus promises that by mission 10, your abstract, messy idea is cleanly defined. By mission 20, you have built the strategic scaffolding to make it viable.
And by mission 30, you have earned your marketing ninja belt, meaning the project is fully packaged and ready to generate actual capital.
Exactly. It systematically dismantles the overwhelming cognitive load of starting a business.
You don't wake up on Tuesday thinking, oh God, I need to build a company today. You wake up and your only instruction is, today's Tuesday. Your mission is to define your core customer avatar.
Do not worry about Wednesday's branding mission. Just execute Tuesday.
Just Tuesday. And crucially, you're doing this alongside a cohort.
Right, and the cohort is the absolute beating heart of the model. A cohort dictates that a specific group of people start on the exact same day and finish on the exact same day.
And Pinto's framework strongly recommends capping these groups at around 10 participants, right?
Yes, around 10. This creates a high-proximity environment. If you put 50 or 100 people on a live call, the diffusion of responsibility sets in.
Oh, for sure. The introverts mute themselves and hide. The extroverts completely dominate the airtime, and individual accountability just drops to zero.
Exactly. But with 10 people, there is nowhere to hide, and it fosters this profound, unavoidable intimacy.
But, okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm paying top dollar, let's say 2,000 euros, to learn how to scale my B2B consultancy from a renowned expert, why do I care what the other 9 people in the cohort think?
Right.
I mean, I didn't pay for their amateur opinions. I paid for the expert's proven framework. Doesn't this heavy reliance on a peer cohort just feel like the creator offloading their teaching responsibilities onto the paying customers?
It's a completely fair objection, and honestly, it's usually the first point of friction when professionals encounter the bootcamp pricing model.
I can imagine.
But the pedagogical science entirely refutes that intuition. If we look at the framework outlined in the FUN-MOOC source France Université Numérique, they analyze what happens when you put motivated adults into this specific Pressure cooker.
And what happens?
They form what is academically termed a community of practice, or a COP.
A community of practice. How does that actually change the learning outcome for the individual who just wants the expert's advice?
Well, because adult learning, or andragogy, functions completely differently than childhood education.
Okay.
Adults do not retain information effectively through top-down vertical transmission, the classic teacher lecturing the student dynamic.
Right, we just tune it out.
Exactly. A community of practice binds a group through a shared desire to exchange expertise and collaboratively solve real-time problems.
So Pinto explicitly notes that the true magic of a boot camp is actually out of the creator's hands.
Yes. The creator builds the container, but the learners generate the kinetic energy. The pedagogical report refers to this as horizontal interaction, or peer education.
So the horizontal exchange between peers actually drives better retention than the vertical lecture from the expert.
Vastly better. Because when an expert explains a high-level concept, it remains theoretical to the learner. The expert suffers from the curse of knowledge, right? They make it look too easy.
Oh, totally. You watch them do it and think, oh, that's simple, and then you try it and fail.
Right. But when a learner watches the person sitting right next to them in the virtual room, someone with the exact same technical limitations and imposter syndrome successfully apply that concept and get a result, it shatters their limiting beliefs.
It transitions the concept from, oh, that's a good theory, to, well, if they figured it out this morning, I have no excuse not to figure it out this afternoon.
Exactly. And we see this formalized as a core curriculum feature in Flavie Prevost's Incubator Solopreneur. This is a boot camp built for independent consultants and freelancers.
Yeah, she actually dedicates an entire pillar of her 12-week program to this exact dynamic, which she labels the solo family.
The solo family pillar is a structural countermeasure against the most pervasive threat to freelance workers, which is deep systemic isolation.
Because solopreneurs are notorious for working in silos, right? Just trapped in echo chambers of their own anxiety.
Completely. Prevost's model forces the rapid development of a supportive entourage. The community isn't just a passive networking bonus. It is actively engineered to prevent burnout and facilitate what she calls serene growth.
There is an incredibly vivid anecdote from Celine Pinto's materials that perfectly illustrates how this peer-to-peer dynamic actually functions in the wild.
Oh, the LinkedIn banner story.
Yes. She was running a summer cohort focused on helping professionals craft and sell their signature offers via LinkedIn. And in this cohort of 10, she had a participant named Remy who possessed really strong graphic design capabilities.
And another participant named Patricia.
Right. And Patricia was visibly struggling with her personal branding. Her LinkedIn banner and profile visuals were actively undermining her professional credibility.
They just didn't look good.
No. And here is the kicker. Celine Pinto, the paid expert, did not have to step in and fix it. She didn't have to use her time to redesign Patricia's banner.
Because Remy spontaneously took it upon himself to reach out to Patricia and completely overhaul her entire visual profile.
Exactly. He didn't ask for compensation. He didn't do it to get a gold star from the instructor. He did it because they were in the trenches together. The community of practice triggered this protective, collaborative instinct.
And that spontaneous, unprompted collaboration is the definitive metric of a successful bootcamp. Pinto highlights the incredible longevity of these bonds, too.
Oh, yeah, the WhatsApp groups.
Right. She notes that the WhatsApp groups initiated for these short 4-week cohorts routinely continue to operate autonomously 6 months after the official program ends.
That's crazy.
The participants still share daily wins, they troubleshoot client issues, and most interestingly, they police their own behavioral boundaries.
Yes, the boundary policing. I found that detail so fascinating. The participants themselves establish and enforce rules within the chat, like strictly forbidding any business messaging during the weekends or late at night.
Specifically to protect everyone's work-life balance, they effectively generate their own microculture.
Which is the ultimate proof that the facilitator has successfully transitioned a group of passive consumers into a self-sustaining ecosystem. But creating that culture is incredibly fragile.
Oh, very.
It does not happen by accident just because you put 10 people in a Slack channel. It requires highly deliberate, almost invisible facilitation.
Right.
Which brings up a massive operational hurdle. This all sounds wonderfully utopian, right? Everyone organically helping each other, redesigning profiles, cheering each other on. But anyone who has worked in a corporate environment over the last 5 years knows the grim reality of virtual meetings. People check out.
Oh, immediately.
How do you prevent a cohort from devolving into a grid of black squares on Zoom where everyone has their microphone muted and they're secretly answering emails on another monitor.
Yeah, that phenomenon is the existential threat to the entire fait, avec, vous model. It is the razor's edge that separates a life-changing high-ticket boot camp from a disastrous experience that triggers a massive wave of refund requests.
So how do you fix it?
To understand how to engineer genuine remote engagement, we have to dig into the corporate training methodologies detailed in the Segos and Studi source materials.
Let's break down the pathology of a failed virtual room. What are the specific psychological risks when you attempt to force high-level learning through a screen?
The guides isolate three primary failure points: severe cognitive overload, feelings of deep isolation, and the emergence of the ghost participant.
Oh, we all know the ghost participant.
We've all been the ghost participant.
True. They are technically logged into the session, their name is displayed in white text on a black rectangle, but their cognitive presence is entirely absent.
Right. Without the physical spatial pressure of a traditional classroom, the temptation to multitask is overwhelming. The human brain naturally seeks the path of least resistance.
So to combat this diffusion of attention, the experts at Segos developed a highly specific facilitation framework. It's called the LIVE approach.
LEE, right. It's an acronym for the four mandatory pillars of remote training. Create lean, which translates to bond or connection, foster immersion, provide valeur value, and generate emotions.
Lean, immersion, valeur, emotions. Let's ground this in reality, though. How does a creator actually manufacture emotions on a dreary Tuesday morning video call with 10 stressed-out professionals?
Well, it requires the creator to completely abandon the identity of a teacher and adopt the mindset of a facilitator.
What's the difference?
A teacher delivers a monologue. A facilitator anticipates friction. You have to literally script engagement triggers into every 5-minute block of the session. If we connect this to the broader science of attention, remote facilitation is entirely dictated by rhythm.
Rhythm. So you can't just open a slide deck and talk for 45 minutes straight.
No, that is a guaranteed recipe for cognitive overload. The brain simply cannot process a static visual and a continuous audio stream for that long without dissociating.
So what do you do instead?
The facilitator must rapidly and aggressively alternate formats. You might push a dense, pre-recorded 5-minute video explaining a technical concept, but immediately follow it with a live 10-minute collaborative workshop in breakout rooms.
And then snap them back to the main room for a rapid-fire Q&A.
Exactly. Keep them moving.
And the sources heavily emphasize the mandatory use of external interactive tools to break the visual monotony of the video interface. We see constant references to tools like WooClap for live anonymous polling.
Or Padlet, which acts as a collaborative digital canvas where everyone is simultaneously moving sticky notes around.
The mechanical brilliance of a tool like Padlet isn't just that it's fun, it physically requires the participant to move their mouse, click the screen, and type an input.
Right, you are physically forcing them to lean forward and interact with the interface, which neurologically prevents them from leaning back and slipping into that passive consumption mode they use when they're watching Netflix.
Which catapults us directly into one of the most fiercely debated topics in the entire remote work ecosystem, the rule of the webcam.
Oh, yes.
To mandate the camera or to allow people to stay hidden. I know a lot of people who deeply resent being forced to perform on camera at 8 a.m.
The resentment is very real, and the Segos training guide tackles this friction head-on. They stipulate that while a trainer absolutely has the pedagogical justification to require cameras to be on, dictating it as a blind authoritarian rule breeds immediate hostility.
Right, you can't just say, camera's on because I said so.
Exactly. The facilitator must clearly articulate the why. You have to frame the camera not as a tool of corporate surveillance, but as the primary instrument of human empathy.
Give me an example of how you'd say that.
A simple phrasing shift like, I need your cameras on because I rely on seeing your facial reactions to know if I am explaining this concept clearly. That completely disarms the participant.
Wow, yeah, it makes them a co-creator of the learning experience rather than just a captive audience.
And extrapolating from the FUN-MOOC data on peer education, the entire fait, avec, vous model collapses without that visual vulnerability.
Because if the core magic is horizontal peer-to-peer connection, you cannot build trust with a black screen.
You really can't. When you admit you are struggling with a concept and you physically see 3 other highly accomplished people in the grid nodding their heads in solidarity, that nonverbal communication is what builds a cohort culture that is intensely professional yet profoundly intimate.
The camera is really the only mechanism that grounds the virtual space in physical reality, but managing that energy requires immense skill.
It does. It's exhausting for the facilitator.
And here's where the operational mechanics get incredibly impressive. Let's look at Celine Pinto's actual minute-by-minute weekly routine for managing a boot camp. She doesn't just email a syllabus and hope for the best.
No, she orchestrates the entire week.
Every Monday at exactly 7 a.m., the platform automatically unlocks the new module, triggering an email that states, "Your mission for this week is now unlocked."
And the semantics there are vital. Mission. It is not a reading assignment. It is not homework.
Right.
The word mission implies an objective that must be conquered. It activates a totally different psychological drive.
So later that same Monday, she initiates the live cohort call. But she doesn't open the call by diving straight into the curriculum. She mandates a tour to table, a rapid check-in around the virtual room, specifically to gauge the energy of the moment.
That is the direct application of the lean in and emotions pillars from the life framework. She is taking the emotional temperature of the room.
She's validating their humanity and acknowledging their stress before she demands their intellectual output.
Exactly. Once the energy is calibrated, the group collectively reviews and critiques the deliverables from the previous week. They look at the raw work.
And finally, she provides the strategic context for the new weekly mission. And that is it. Her active, synchronous facilitation is largely done on Monday.
Right. For the rest of the week, the asynchronous tools, the WhatsApp group, the Padlets they take over, and the community of practice sustains its own momentum while they actually execute the work.
Which naturally forces us to examine the actual work being done. I mean, we've decoded the psychology in the engagement architecture, but what is the structural DNA of a curriculum that can reliably guarantee a massive transformation in just 4 to 8 weeks?
We're talking about the mission model. Traditional education is built around sprawling subjects and theoretical topics. Boot camps are ruthlessly structured around hyper-specific weekly deliverables.
Let's look at the incredible diversity of the syllabuses in our source stack, because it proves this architecture is completely agnostic to the industry.
Let's begin at the absolute highest end of the market. Cleo Maho operates the Hypercroissants Bootcamp Hypergrowth. This is not for beginners.
Okay.
It is engineered for established CEOs and executive teams.
And the entire program is compressed into just 4 weeks, delivered via 4 half-day virtual workshops.
Which is wild.
4 half-days to restructure a scaling enterprise. That sounds dangerously brief.
It is brief, but the density is staggering. Week 1 is exclusively focused on individuals, the mechanics of attracting and retaining elite talent.
Okay.
Week 2 shifts entirely to strategy defining a unique, unassailable growth mechanism. Week 3 is pure execution, installing a culture of flawless operational discipline.
And week 4 is liquidites, or cash flow, architecting the financial runway to sustain hypergrowth.
Exactly. 4 weeks. 4 non-negotiable strategic pillars that dictate whether a company scales or implodes.
Then you pivot to the complete opposite end of the entrepreneurial spectrum with Flavie Prevo's Incubator Solopreneur. This stretches to a 12-week timeline, but it relies on the exact same rigid 4-pillar structure.
Yes, her curriculum is highly compartmentalized too. Pillar 1 is solo expertise identifying and refining a highly desirable, monetizable skill.
Pillar 2 is solo media constructing an organic inbound content machine so the freelancer never relies on cold outreach.
Pillar 3 is solo produit, packaging that expertise into scalable digital assets. And Pillar 4 is the solo family we analyzed earlier.
We even see this rigid sequencing in the creative and technical arts. The academic report breaks down the Sprint Podcast Bootcamp run by Elson Media. It is a 28-hour hybrid container.
Right. Week 1 forces identity and strategy. What is the show and who is it for? Week 2 is strictly tech and equipment, literally forcing the participant to buy the microphone, plug it in, and configure the software.
Week 3 mandates post-production and audio engineering, and week 4 is the launch and distribution strategy.
The universal thread connecting B2B hypergrowth, freelance survival, and audio engineering is the adoption of the sprint methodology.
Right, borrowing from agile software development.
Exactly. When a human brain is confronted with a massive amorphous goal like, I want to launch a business or I want to start a podcast, the cognitive load triggers immediate paralysis.
You just don't know where to start.
The bootcamp slices that monolith into weekly micro-missions. It completely short-circuits perfectionism. You do not have the luxury of spending a month agonizing over the perfect hex code for your podcast logo when the syllabus dictates you have 3 days to finalize artwork before you must transition to audio mixing.
It is an engine built to force the creation of an MVP, a minimum viable product. The Apollo 13 Guide on Organic Startup Marketing, the Lotranchi syllabus, both hammer this concept.
They do.
You don't spend 6 isolated months building a pristine, flawless product in the dark. You build something that is good enough in 4 weeks, you push it into the real world, and you let the market break it so you can get real feedback.
And if we want to see the ultimate distillation of this immediate, tangible ROI, look at Marjolaine Grandin's Bootcamp IA.
The AI Bootcamp.
Yeah. She is teaching generative artificial intelligence, but she isn't selling a philosophical exploration of neural networks. The value proposition is ruthlessly mathematical. You will permanently reclaim 1 hour of your working day every single day by deploying her systems.
The curriculum isn't theoretical at all. The source document shows she hands the cohort 10 ready-to-install AI agents and highly specific fill-in-the-blank prompt templates.
It is designed for immediate, undeniable application. The participant copies the template on Tuesday morning, automates a tedious data entry task by Tuesday afternoon, and literally saves an hour of labor on Wednesday.
The transformation is instant and visible. So think about your own professional life right now. Think about that one project that has been sitting on your whiteboard for a year.
We all have one.
Right. If you were handed a single non-negotiable mission every Monday for 4 weeks, and you knew a cohort of 10 sharp professionals was waiting on a Zoom call to see your execution, how much closer would you be to launching?
The done with you model is essentially a behavioral hack to force execution.
But facilitating that level of profound hands-on transformation requires immense energy from the creator, which naturally brings us to the economics of the model.
The money.
Yeah. How do you praise an experience that delivers the scale of an online course, but the impact of a private consultant?
The business mechanics behind these bootcamps are a wild deviation from traditional e-learning. The pricing strategies we see in the stack vary aggressively, driven by the target demographic and the intensity of the done-with-you access.
Let's start at the entry level of the market. We see Lotranchi offering their 30-day entrepreneurial bootcamp for roughly $30.
Right. And at that price point, it functions primarily as an automated digital product with a self-policing community forum attached. It requires massive volume to be profitable.
Moving up to the mid-tier, Marjolaine Grandin's AI Bootcamp utilizes a brilliant split-tier strategy. You can purchase the purely autonomous, self-paced version, the video modules, and the prompt templates for €456.
But if you want the actual bootcamp, the live weekly facilitation, the cohort accountability, the WhatsApp access, the price quadruples to €1,620.
And we see Elson Media's podcast Sprint occupying that same premium mid-tier space, pricing between €1,700 and €2,040, often subsidized by corporate training budgets.
Finally, at the enterprise level, Cleo Mahou's Hypercroissants Bootcamp demands between $2,500 and $5,000 for those 4 half-days.
Because the ROI of fixing a scaling company is measured in millions. So the revenue potential for the expert is staggering. If you sell 10 seats at €1,600, that is a €16,000 revenue event for a 4-week sprint.
But getting 10 strangers to hand over high-ticket payments on the exact same day requires serious marketing infrastructure.
It requires an entirely different mechanism than selling a standard online course. Because a bootcamp is a cohort with a strict, non-negotiable start date, a creator cannot rely on an evergreen marketing strategy.
No, they must execute a highly orchestrated launch strategy.
A launch strategy operates on forced scarcity. It's an event. If you miss the enrollment window, you are locked out until the next cohort, which might be 6 months away.
And Celine Pinto warns that executing a launch requires a density of communication that most creators find deeply uncomfortable. You must build a concentrated crescendo of excitement and urgency over a 30-day window.
How do you do that without just sounding desperate?
She dissects 2 primary methodologies for generating this pressure. The first is the classic activation event, typically a live, free masterclass hosted about 3 weeks before the cohort begins.
The old webinar funnel. You teach a micro concept for 45 minutes and then pivot to pitching the €2,000 bootcamp.
Exactly, but Pinto provides a very stark, data-backed warning about the decay of this method. She notes that attendance rates for free activation events are in free fall.
Yeah, she cites a recent campaign where she secured 100 email registrations for a masterclass, and only 2 individuals actually attended the live session.
A 2% attendance rate. That is catastrophic for a launch.
Why are people abandoning the webinar model? Is it just general screen fatigue?
It's a symptom of a much larger macroeconomic shift regarding the value of information. 10 years ago, a free 1-hour masterclass from a verified expert on a niche topic was a genuinely scarce resource. People would block their calendars for it.
Sure.
Today, the internet is drowning in free, high-quality content, and AI can instantly synthesize any framework you ask for. The perceived value of free information has plummeted to zero.
So the psychological urgency to show up live no longer exists because the user assumes they can just find the information later.
Exactly, which means relying on a webinar to fill a high-ticket cohort is practically gambling.
So what is the alternative methodology?
The alternative is relentless, direct, organic social media marketing. Instead of trying to trick people into a webinar funnel, you sell the transformation directly in the public square.
Pinto reveals that during a launch window, she will post on platforms like LinkedIn 1 to 2 times a day, every single day, exclusively dissecting the methodology and outcomes of the upcoming bootcamp.
Right.
Posting twice a day for a month sounds like a fast track to exhausting your audience and getting unfollowed.
It would be if the content were just a repetitive sales pitch. This is where the Apollo 13 guide on organic marketing provides the missing link. They describe building a content flywheel rather than a linear funnel. You are curating a highly specific journey for the reader over those 30 days.
Let's break down the Apollo 13 flywheel. Step 1 is attention. You publish a deeply valuable, completely free guide, something like the exact prompt structure to automate your inbox.
Right. Step 2 is consideration. A week later, you publish a nuanced article comparing the fait, avec, vous methodology against the failure rates of solo learning.
Step 3 is conversion. You deploy undeniable social proof, sharing raw video testimonials and case studies from past cohort members who achieved the exact result your audience wants.
But this high-wire act raises a terrifying operational question. The launch model concentrates all potential revenue into a tiny window. What happens when a launch simply fails to convert?
Pinto is bracingly honest about this. A failed bootcamp launch isn't just a quiet sales month. Because you have paused all other consulting work to prepare for the cohort, a failed launch means you are suddenly missing tens of thousands of euros in projected quarterly revenue.
It can financially destabilize an independent creator.
Which is why she insists that the ultimate risk mitigation is long-term pre-education. A creator cannot simply invent a bootcamp and spring it on their audience.
No, definitely not. If you have spent 2 years building an audience by sharing free tips on digital photography, and suddenly you launch a 2,000 euro bootcamp on real estate investing, the launch will fail with a 0% conversion rate.
The audience must be methodically pre-educated on your specific philosophy and methodology for months before the enrollment window ever opens.
Okay, so let's assume the creator nails the pre-education, the flywheel works, the launch converts, and the 4-week sprint is a massive success. The participants are crushing their missions, redesigning each other's profiles, and operating at peak energy.
What happens on day 31? What happens when the Zoom room closes, the syllabus ends, and the creator steps away?
That transition represents the moment of maximum vulnerability for the learner. The pedagogical reports are unanimous on this. The end of a highly structured cohort induces a sudden vacuum.
The abrupt loss of the solo family.
Precisely. The literature identifies 2 immediate threats: acute digital fatigue, the physiological and mental exhaustion of operating at a sprint pace for a month, and the aggressive return of technical doubt.
Because when the facilitator is no longer available to instantly troubleshoot a minor software glitch, the momentum stalls.
In the podcasting industry, we have a grim, highly specific term for this phenomenon. We call it pod fade.
Pod fade.
Yeah. Someone goes through the boot camp, they launch the show, they push out 3 episodes fueled by adrenaline, and then they just vanish. The friction of editing without a cohort watching them becomes too much. The microphone goes into a drawer, and they never publish again.
To inoculate learners against pod fade, or its equivalent in any discipline, the curriculum must be explicitly designed for post-bootcamp survival. The overarching goal of the Done With You model is not merely to force the completion of a single isolated project.
Right. If that were the goal, the client should have simply hired a done-for-you agency.
The true objective is the installation of permanent behavioral change and the creation of scalable assets. This loops perfectly back to Flevi Prevost's solopreneur pillar.
The boot camp shouldn't just teach you how to hustle harder on a treadmill. It must teach you how to extract your expertise and forge it into digital assets, a premium template, an automated sequence, a flagship course that generate leverage.
The boot camp is the intensive sprint required to build the machine, so that post-boot camp, the machine operates autonomously, finally breaking the cycle of trading time for money.
And to ensure the participant doesn't abandon the machine the moment things get difficult, elite boot camps implement structural safety nets that outlast the curriculum. The FUNMOOC academic report highlights the critical effectiveness of the buddy system.
The micro-cohort within the cohort.
Yes. In the final week of the program, the facilitator actively pairs participants into accountability duos. This guarantees that when the formal infrastructure of the bootcamp dissolves, the peer-to-peer accountability remains intact.
You still have a moral obligation to check in with one specific human being every Tuesday morning to confirm you executed your weekly objective.
It's brilliant because it removes the expert from the equation entirely, but sustains the behavioral pressure. It proves that the most elite boot camps aren't really selling you a new technical skill.
They are forcibly uninstalling your old habits and installing an entirely new operating system for how you conceptualize work, how you defeat your own procrastination, and how you leverage a community to maintain velocity.
It is a profound psychological transformation operating under the guise of a 4-week technical syllabus.
Let's bring all of this together. The Done With You Bootcamp is not just another marketing trend. It is a highly potent, carefully engineered synthesis.
It harnesses the undeniable power of horizontal peer education, structures it through ruthless, non-negotiable micro-missions, and secures it within a high accountability community of practice.
Whether the objective is mastering generative AI, scaling a B2B infrastructure, or launching a media property, this model flawlessly bridges the massive chasm between passive, lonely e-learning and exorbitant, unscalable one-on-one consulting.
It is a framework that extracts a much higher operational toll from the creator, forcing them to master emotional facilitation rather than just rote teaching. But the return on that effort is an exponentially higher success rate for the people they serve.
If you are an expert listening to this and you realize you have maxed out your bandwidth trading hours for dollars, packaging your methodology into a fait, avec, vous bootcamp could be the key to unlocking scalable revenue without sacrificing impact.
Absolutely.
And if you are a professional staring at a project you've been procrastinating on for a year, realize that buying yet another cheap passive video course will not save you. You don't need more information. You need the heat, the structure, and the unrelenting sprint of a cohort.
I want to leave you with a final thought that reframes this entire discussion within the trajectory of the modern economy. We are entering an era where artificial intelligence can instantly, perfectly, and freely answer virtually any theoretical or factual question a human being can ask.
Yeah.
The mere transmission of raw knowledge is rapidly approaching a monetary value of zero. You can no longer build a business simply selling access to information.
Because an AI agent will give it to your customer for free in 3 seconds.
Exactly. But an AI cannot provide human accountability. It cannot replicate the profound shared emotional experience of struggling through a complex problem with a peer. It cannot look you in the eye and hold you to a standard. If raw knowledge is now a free commodity, then the Done With You model, a model focused purely on implementation, human empathy, and curated execution, is not just a clever monetization strategy for online creators. It is the inevitable, necessary future of all adult education and corporate leadership.
The next time you find yourself entirely paralyzed by an unfinished project, the answer isn't to go searching for more information. The answer is to find your cohort, embrace the pressure, and finally execute the work together.